How we doing, everybody? It's your guy Wardy here, and we're back at it breaking down all the latest Mets news and rumors here in Mets land leading up to this year's trade deadline. And in case you guys are new here, hi, how you doing? My name's Wardy. I cover the Mets every single day, and there's no platform that you guys need to seek when it comes to actually finding everything regarding the Mets, especially leading up to the deadline itself, because we've covered everything regarding the club up until this point, including our past night's post-game show, as the Mets are being deemed now as a front runner for Luis Robert, and Luis Angel Acuna very well could be the biggest piece heading the other way. So if you want to know my thoughts and analysis of that, along with the Mets dropping their series of the Padres by a whopping score of 7-1 this past night, make sure to check out our post-game coverage live show after you find yourself watching this video. Because folks, we have so much to get into. Not only are the Mets being deemed now as potentially the most aggressive buyer leading up to this deadline, meaning that there should be very few teams that make more significant acquisitions to their team than the Mets when looking to upgrade their bullpen, when looking to upgrade the outfield, and potentially the rotation still as well. And to start with the bullpen, everybody, latest reporting has the Mets in the mix for Mr. Jhoan Duran from the Minnesota Twins, their flamethrowing closer. And great belief now is that Duran's going to be traded as soon as sometime today. So we're going to get into where the Mets stand on that front, as well as the outfield configuration. Because if Luis Robert doesn't come to Queens, if it isn't going to be, say, a Cedric Mullins, who else could it be? Well, the Mets are actively in the market for Steven Kwan, as well as Ramon Laureano, telling you that they're making sure that no stone goes unturned, while Robert is still clearly the favorite pick that they want as of now versus others, and I'll expand more as to why that is. And on the rotational front, we know that the Mets have been long linked to guys like Sandy Alcantara and to certain degrees Edward Cabrera, but now we have seen the linkage continue as they've at least nipped at the heels, if not more, for one Joe Ryan from the Minnesota Twins, Dylan Cease, as we know, from the Padres, as well as what you guys will see there, and Mr. Mackenzie Gore of the Washington Nationals. No, it does not guarantee a trade is going to happen, but the fact that the Mets are involved in all these markets is telling that they're weighing all options right now, and that is never a bad thing. We're going to break down all the latest connections with the Mets and these players, which ones make more sense to land in Queens versus others, as well as plenty more that I didn't even relay to you guys yet, because we're just going to actively do it throughout the live show, including the latest on Brandon Lowe. As we know, the Mets love him, and we're going to see just how much are the Mets willing to go for Lowe, and just how willing are the Rays potentially able to trade away their all-star second baseman with that key bat. So guys, hit that like and subscribe button on your way, and sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride, which is our latest New York Metropolitan news and rumors segment to break down. But before we get into it, everybody, I want to quickly shout out our amazing sponsors that make today's show happen. They're at SeatGeek. You guys know the drill with SeatGeek. Make sure to head over there and utilize our promo code WARDY10. That way you too get 10% off your next ticket purchase. And thank you guys kindly for doing exactly that, especially for Mets tickets, concert show tickets, comedy show tickets, the NFL season right around the corner, you name it. SeatGeek always has you covered there, as well as our amazing sponsor, Moomoo, the official trading platform of the New York Mets. Hey Mets fans, if you love diving deep into the numbers like WAR or ERA, then you absolutely are going to love what today's video sponsor Moomoo brings to your investing game. Think Moneyball, but this time for your portfolio. I'm beyond excited to share that Moomoo, the proud trading platform of the New York Mets, is here to level up your investing. Moomoo is a global trading platform currently serving over 25 million users in markets like the United States, Canada, Singapore, and Japan. Whether you're just starting out or if you're a more seasoned trader, Moomoo's app and desktop platform offers commission-free trading on stocks, ETFs, and options, no contract fees either. So plus, you get premium tools, guys, whether it's going to be the institutional grade analytics, Morningstar research, and analyst ratings, all free for funded users. And right now, Moomoo is doubling down for Mets fans. Sign up through my exclusive link down below, make a qualifying deposit, and get up to, yes, 60 free stocks, plus not one but two Mets Suite tickets. Not to mention, Moomoo customers can get free tickets to all Monday home games at Citi Field, and who knows, you may even see me at a game. And with zero commissions and zero contract fees on stock and ETF options, you keep more of your wins. Are you guys ready to trade smarter? Download Moomoo now and swing for the financial fences. And shout out once more to Moomoo for being an amazing sponsor here on the platform. Okay, folks, let's get right into this. And as well, in case you guys don't know, Wardy Day is right around the corner, August 1st. We're just over a day away. Our first event at Citi Field where you can hang out with your guy Wardy. I will have the ticket link down below in the pinned comment for you guys in the description to check out. But we have less than 10 tickets now, and we're getting closer to now down to 5. So again, guys, if you still want to attend, get them while they still last. But as you guys can see here, let's begin with one of numerous reports that we have to break down today. And this one is going to be courtesy of everyone's favorite I should say, insider to hate or not be the biggest fan of. And this has a lot more to do with just what the man typically says outside of reporting, and that's just usually ragging on the Mets to some degree. But Buster Olney in his latest piece had the following to say there for ESPN. The New York Mets' effort to get better, the Arizona Diamondbacks are the epicenter of the teams looking to part with players, but between now and the deadline, the Mets might be the most aggressive club adding players, looking for a starter who could pitch game 1, 2, or 3 of the postseason series. Relief pitching in outfield, perhaps the Cedric Mullins, is among their needs, and Mullins is in the category as a fit for this Mets team, but he is clearly not their number one option. Robert, I think goes without saying, is the Mets' number one option right now, and unless you guys have been living under a rock that you're going to say, hey, Wardy, why are the Mets interested in a guy batting around the Mendoza line? Please check out last night's post-game show and the abundance of content that we have regarding Robert over the past 2 weeks, because I beat this drum plenty. I know all the pros that come with Robert as well as the cons, and the risk does not outweigh the reward, in my humble opinion, for what the Mets would be having to give up to land the coveted outfielder. But expand more on the Mets looking like the most aggressive club in adding players. Why is this notable, everybody? Because this goes in direct hand to what I've been telling you guys for weeks, if not a month and a half plus now. David Stearns is not going to sit on his hands the way that he did at last year's deadline. The main reason being that was not only David's first year as president of baseball operations, but it was a Mets team that was 11 games below 500, far exceeded expectations in summer, and the Mets really didn't know exactly how much they should go all in at that point in time. Well, things are different. When you have Juan Soto on your team from the start of the season, in which he's not playing today, but he should be back in the Mets lap as soon as August 1st. On Wardy Day, funny enough, they're at Citi Field against the Giants to kickstart that series on fireworks night that Friday. Outside there of Juan Soto, everybody, the Mets are currently in a win-now stage. When you go 2 games shy of the dance last year in the World Series that you lose to the Dodgers, you most certainly are looking to have, if not at minimum, that same run, then eerily close to. And what we see now is that the Mets and David Stearns have already been diligent. They brought in Gregory Soto, who's a quality lefty for them in their bullpen, but they need to do more. And that's why we've seen all the rumblings going on regarding guys like Robert, Sandy Alcantara, and others, and we're finally starting to see these leaks come out because David has been very hush-hush and really keeping things out of the public eye too much until moves actually happen. However, it's been far more difficult for Stearns to keep things to the vest as much this time because he's clearly more aggressive than he has been in the past year and a half prior, whether it's the offseason or the trade deadline itself for the Mets and actually making proper moves for the better for this club. So now we've all got the same gist. We understand that the Mets are now looking like one of, if not the most aggressive buyer at this year's deadline. So when speaking of buying, everybody, let's get into the latest here on the bullpen front in particular, because as you guys can see along with me, everybody, it is as follows, and it is going to be right here. You guys can see the Phillies and Red Sox are among many teams prominently in on Jhoan Duran. The Yankees, Mets, Mariners, and others are also in that same mix. Mark Feinsand of MLB stated shortly after, things are moving on Jhoan Duran. Twins could move their closer today. So, again, Mark doesn't go out of his way to say that unless he knows very well that things are getting spicy in the case of Jhoan Duran, guys. And I think when it comes to top relievers, while I can't sit here in confidence and tell you that the Mets are guaranteed to land someone like Duran, mainly because of the fact of just how much it's going to take to land someone like him. But the Mets are in this market for a reason. And what has been relayed personally from me, to me rather, throughout the industry, is that not only are the Mets anticipated to still land a couple arms, but there's a greater belief that the Mets are actually going to land more relief help than even a guarantee of a starter. Yeah, you heard that correctly. There is still a greater understanding that the Mets want to build a super bullpen, and that comes at the demise of adding a starter because starters' prices just don't drop from where they want them to be, then they may be inclined to do that. And in particular, it does appear that the Mets are going to be looking for at least one piece that could really be more on the upper echelon end, like a true high leverage setup slash closer option to pair with Edwin Diaz. While the other will still be good, but probably won't be to that same degree. So when we evaluate it in that sense, Jhoan Duran does make a lot of sense as one of those options. And Duran this season, everybody, he has just been, casually one of the better relievers in all the American League yet again. No one should be surprised at this if you know Jhoan Duran and his game. The 27-year-old is not a free agent until 2028. That is very appealing to this Mets team because we know that the Mets are obviously in the market for not only a flamethrowing high leverage arm, the way that Duran is constantly sitting north of a hundo on the gun. So you're getting the velocity, you're getting a perfect pair to match there with Edwin Diaz and Duran with multiple years of control. So if there is, say, I apologize, everybody. I just saw a report on Acuna, but it was Ronald Acuna, and I thought it was Luis Angel telling me that there was an injury. And I was about to freak out and be like, there's not a chance in heck that Luis Angel just went down right now somehow, and that's going to potentially impact trade value among other things. That does not appear to be the case. That's Ronald. He's going to be, could play again in 2 to 3 weeks based on those reporting. All right, I don't know why I'm talking about the Braves right now. Getting back to the Mets, everybody, knowing that Duran has a couple years left of control is telling because the Mets want to bring in relief help, not just rentals like Gregory Soto, but they also want to bring in someone that has upside to impact them beyond the 2025 season, especially with the uncertainty as Edwin Diaz is more projected by the day to opt out of his contract and seek a larger deal than even what he currently has, knowing how fantastic of a closer year Edwin is having. So Duran, in just under 50 innings this season, has right around a 10K per nine with 3 walks per nine, a 2 ERA and a 2.68 expected ERA and a 2.49 FIP. I don't really think I need to expand much more than that other than saying, yeah, we will all gladly take Jhoan Duran and this Mets bullpen. And by adding Duran, you automatically give the Mets a super bullpen and their 1-2 punch duo. And knowing that the Phillies have been amongst the most aggressive suitors for Duran is further telling as to why the Mets need to do everything in their power to try to make a trade like this happen. Because if you do not land Duran, another contending team is going to. And among the contending teams that are in on Duran, it's not just the Phillies. We know the LA Dodgers are in that mix. We know the Yankees are in the mix. We know basically every top big market dog is in the market for Jhoan Duran. So this will not be an easy bidding war binding stretch to ultimately come out victorious, but do the Mets have the assets to make it happen for Duran? That is where we can confidently say a resounding yes, versus that wasn't the case a couple years ago when the Mets had their top prospects, but they had nothing in between from, say, the 10 to 15, 25 area. It just a whole lot of nothing. Now the Mets have an abundance of riches to choose from that while it may suck to part ways with some of these arms, at the same time, it could come, in return by getting one of these key players that we're relaying right now. So Jhoan Duran, I definitely want to know your thoughts about him in the comments down below, everybody. If you're for or against the potential Duran pursuit there, I am most certainly for, and if you could prime away from the Phillies, that's great, because the Phillies are in desperate need of a closer, so they're going to do everything in their power to try to land one of these top arms. If the Phillies land a Duran, or if the Phillies land someone in similarity like a David Bednar, whoever, then the Mets absolutely need to make sure that they continue to shore up this bullpen, because we already are bested against the Phillies. One, matching up rotations one by one. The Phillies clearly have the better and deeper rotation, but the Mets can at least make things more balanced where our bullpen is superior or close to. Then we're going to be feeling good about the offense between the Mets and the Phillies, because I love this Mets lineup, and if you bring in someone like Luis Robert and potentially a Brandon Lowe, it goes from good to great to like, oh my God, this is one of, if not the best in baseball. And that really is not an exaggeration when you understand how these players will be utilized. But all right, guys, talking about Duran, we had more than enough that we need to say there. So now going on from Jhoan, let's get into more on this front, everybody, for each and every one of you. Because when we talk about Duran, there are a lot of other guys that we also need to shed some light on and break down the potential of them landing in Queens. And outside of that reporting that we have seen, we also did see the following today, everybody, from Jeff Passan of ESPN, which reaffirms what we knew, but it's really encouraging to see Jeff, out of all people, be going out of the way to say this. As you guys can see here, per Jeff Passan of ESPN, and shout out to my guy Mets Muse there who initially posted this, he sees the Mets are expected to land an arm and a center fielder bat before tomorrow's deadline. And Passan has went out of his way to say how, again, the Mets are one of the more aggressive teams. So he's really piggybacking off of what Buster said, or whichever one said it first. They both work for ESPN, so they're both getting along the lines of similar intel there. But yeah, I would be ecstatic if Robert is landing here as well as a Dylan Cease. I don't foresee a Dylan Cease to happen, but the Mets are in that market, and the Mets are in that market maybe a little bit more than what we initially anticipated. Because when we get into where the Mets stand when it comes to the rotation fits, let's take a look at the following, everybody, because I think you guys are going to enjoy this. As I have pulled up from Jon Heyman in his latest piece as of yesterday, we have some keynotes to share in regards to the Mets, and they are as follows. The Mets are not inclined to move any other top pitching prospects and are pretty reluctant to do so. They, however, as we know, could promote one of those three prospects if they don't land a starting pitcher. And as of now, while I think Sandy definitely is a strong possibility for this team, there's very much a role where the Mets do not land a starter at all. And if they do, then is where you're going to consider one of the Jonatans, the Brennan Sproats, and the Noel McLeans of the world. And fun fact on Ton, he struck out 8 today, didn't allow an earned run, but he did walk 5 batters. Far and away his most egregious outing when it comes to the walk rate. He's usually not at all like that, but Ton, for whatever reason, just didn't have his best stuff with his command today. Outside that, however, what we also know is that the Mets have in fact called, not only in regards to Dylan Cease, but have also checked in at minimum, if not more, for Mr. Joe Ryan and Mackenzie Gore. Now, I would like to preface that the Mets showing interest in these players does not guarantee that a trade is going to happen, obviously. If that was the case, then out of the hundreds of players that we talk about every single year, the Mets would have acquired them all. That's just not how this business goes. But expand more on a guy like not only Joe Ryan, but also Mackenzie Gore on the upside that comes if the Mets are able to land someone like them. Well, I'll just say this. The pipe dream would be that the Mets make a package haul of a trade happen and they go out and land both Joe Ryan and, yes, that being Jhoan Duran from the Twins. It would cost like everything, I feel like, because Ryan has multiple years left to control. So does Duran. There's not a chance in heck they're going to give up these young, valuable, really controllable assets without getting a king's ransom in return. So we're going to talk more on Duran and Mackenzie Gore in the sense of wishful thinking than it actually becoming a reality, because I don't want any Mets fan to come out of this video to say, oh, Wardy was telling us that the Mets have been linked to these players. That means we're going to land them. That isn't always the case, and I don't foresee that to be the case here, but we should have this discussion, because if the Mets do land them, this is creme de la creme. When it comes to the best starters that are potentially available that the Mets can land, look no further here than Mr. Joe Ryan, as well as there and the others. Joel Sherman just stated as well, and this is Cedric Mullins' swan song with the Orioles, which is likely. It's been a heck of a series against the Blue Jays and a total two-way star turn today. The Mets are among those who can use an upgrade in the center field, and we know the Mets are in the market for Mullins, but I don't believe the Mets like Mullins as much as Robert from everything that I've heard throughout the industry, as well as what's been publicly relayed. But Joe Ryan, guys, this is an ace. If the Mets are going to go out and give up big assets for a pitcher, Joe Ryan's the exception. In 121 innings, the 29-year-old right-hander has an over 10 K per nine to a sub-2 walks per nine, 1.78 to be exact, a 2.8 ERA, a 3.2 expected ERA, a 3.1 FIP, and a 3.5 expected FIP. A lot to love there, right around a 3 WAR season already. Joe Ryan is on pace to have the best season of his young career, and he's just getting started, mind you. This would be a huge force, a huge weapon into this Mets rotation. But again, you have to give to get. So the only way that this would happen is if the Mets really gave up a king's ransom of a haul. And that is why I think the Mets are more on the outside looking in there, unless things change negotiation-wise from now leading up until the deadline itself. But outside there, Mr. Joe Ryan, in which there are so many very appealing things about what he would immediately add into this Mets rotation. Outside of him, there are a select few other controllable starters out there that would do wonders for this team. And I'm going to talk rather briefly on the next, that being in Mackenzie Gore, more so because of the fact that not that I don't like Gore, because I like Gore a lot. I really do. As a matter of fact, Mackenzie Gore is one of my favorite pitchers that's on a so-called rival team there in the Mets, that being in the Washington Nationals. But as I told you guys on the platform a couple days ago, there is not a chance, and you know what, that the Mets land Mackenzie Gore. And the reason why I feel this way is more so on the fact that you're going to have to give up a premium to land Gore. Because unlike Peter Bendix, who gave away Jesus Luzardo in what I thought was an underwhelming trade to the Philadelphia Phillies before the season began, or right around there, for an in-division trade, we know that even under now new leadership, because they fired Mike Rizzo since then, and the Washington Nationals, that they're probably not going to love the idea of trading a young, controllable southpaw with a lot of upside, ace caliber upside, to the Mets out of all people. Like, the Mets would have to give up such a king's ransom for Gore. I just don't even think that they would get close to going there. 117 innings, 11 K per nine, a 3.3 walks per nine, a 3.5 ERA, a 3.6 expected ERA, a 3.2 FIP, and a 3.4 expected FIP. What is there not to like Mackenzie Gore is really the greater question. As you guys can see from the highlights alongside me, as well as his dominance that he's had against the Mets before, we know that Mackenzie Gore is until the deadline. There are many that stick out, but among the three here, they have all been to connect to the Mets because the Mets are obviously not going without any stone unturned, from Mackenzie Gore to Dylan Cease to what we saw there in Jhoan Duran. But now, guys, to talk more not only on the pitching options for this Mets team, let's get into more on this front because we have a lot more reports and a lot more players to get into. Like I said, we're trying to speed run this as fast as we can because there's so much that has come out just over the past 12 to 24 hours alone. And now, to get into more of this reporting, guys, from Jon Heyman's piece yesterday, we also have that the Mets not only could be a fit for Steven Kwan, but it's basically has been reaffirmed today that the Mets have called. They're in that market for Kwan. And while Kwan isn't necessarily as likely to happen as a Luis Robert or a Cedric Mullins, the Mets do like Steven Kwan. They do find him appealing, but we know that he's going to come at a very rock-solid price. Especially for the Mets, they would have to make sure that a guy like Kwan would either be willing to play center field, or if they gave Nimmo some more reps in center at times to accommodate Kwan to get more reps in left field. And here's the thing. From everything that I know, not only do the Mets like Kwan, but they know that he's going to come at a much prettier penny than probably a Luis Robert. So Kwan is another one of these guys that anything can happen from now leading up to until the deadline. It does appear that there's a greater likelihood that Steven will be traded than what was the case 48 hours ago. But what team will that be? Far from a guarantee that it'll be a team like the Mets. Kwan, I think if you had to put in ranking where he is on the Mets' likelihood of landing, he's probably a 3 or a 4 right now among the outfielders. I don't think he's higher than Cedric Mullins or Luis Robert at all, and I don't say that lightly. If things change and the Mets land Kwan, I'm certainly not going to complain. I would love Steven Kwan, but I'm just telling you that if it doesn't happen, that these are kind of the reasons why, with both Robert and Mullins leading the way in that regard. But the Mets do luck out if they are able to bring in a man of Steven Kwan's caliber. He is one of the hottest bats available leading up until this year's deadline, and for good reason. Because Kwan, what I enjoy so much about him and what kind of separates him from the rest to a degree, has a lot to do with the fact that Steven is just not only a fantastic contact hitter, but he's that kind of ball player that does all the little things right. He's the kind of guy that if you already have a deep lineup, can blossom and thrive for you the way that like a Tommy Edman, for example, thrives so well for the Dodgers down the stretch last year. That's kind of the similar vibes I get in a Kwan. A strong defender when he's right, obviously. A guy that can go gap to gap for you offensively while also exemplifying strong contact ability and obviously solid eye skills when it comes to the on-base ability, because he has right around a 351 on base currently. And as you guys can see also from the highlights beside me as well in regards to Kwan, in case you guys have not watched Steven at all this year, like I said, there are certainly things to like about Steven Kwan. I apologize if it's a little laggy here. We're doing the best that we can at the moment, but Kwan is a piece that would really change the dynamic of this Mets lineup for the better, right? He has 9 home runs, 52 runs scored, 38 RBIs, 11 stolen bags, a 286 average, a 351 on base, and a 410 slug. I mean, we'll gladly take that. As of now, you're looking at right around a 760, 770 OPS or so just under 800. A 114 on the WRC+, so he's 14% below league average, but he's both a plus offensive and defensive player that we've seen this year for the Guardians. And Kwan, who is not a free agent until 2028, that team controls what's going to carry his value even more. Knowing that they don't have to trade him, he has 3 minor league options, not that you would need to utilize them, but again, never hurts to have. And he's arbitration eligible starting this offseason. So arbitration eligibility is one of the key factors as to why a team like the Guardians wouldn't be opposed to trading him. Anytime that they can be cheap and save the dollars versus spend them, they're going to likely go ahead and do that. But then we also add the fact that what makes Steven Kwan so appealing is his fit for pretty much any contending team. He's a winning type player. And if Kwan is added into this Mets mix in center field, if he can handle those reps, or more in left field, and then maybe Nimmo gets shifted to center, even though you don't love the idea and Nimmo going back out in center, I think we can all agree there. If it's a limited opportunity, I think I could stomach it. But Steven Kwan, once more, do I think he's a lock or a guarantee to happen? No, I wouldn't say that. But the Mets are clearly in the market for him as well. As I mentioned earlier, no stone will go unturned here. So if it ain't going to be Robert, if it ain't going to be Mullins, don't be surprised if it's someone like Mr. Steven Kwan. And not to get on much of a tangent in regards to Cedric Mullins. He's having himself a very good series there that we're seeing against the Jays, but Mullins' bat has been very underwhelming otherwise for, I would say, probably the good, I don't know. If we had to say how long has Cedric Mullins' bat been underwhelming this season, from the time the Mets were initially connected to Cedric, which was 2+ months ago, his bat has kind of fallen off a cliff since then. He's been a below league average batter. As of late, he's been starting to hit much better, which is good post All-Star break. Not complaining about that, but Mullins makes a lot of sense, especially as that not only outfield fit, but also to a degree a Jesse Winker replacement, where there's no timetable for when Jesse's going to return to this Mets team, and we know that obviously the Mets want to try to replace that power from the left side. And not only him, there are a lot of other people here that I really just think make sense for this Mets team. But Robert and Mullins appear to be still at the top of that list. And let's see that. I love it. I love when I get comments as I'm recording say, Wardy, get over your man crush Robert. He sucks. Well, you guys are really going to hate it if the Mets land Robert. And the reason why we talked about Robert so much is because the Mets are intensifying talks for Robert. You guys can try to shoot the messenger, that is me, all you want. But the reality is that regardless on what your opinion is, us as fans has nothing to do with what really the Mets are going to do and how they operate. If they want Luis Robert, they're going to go ahead and do it. And we just have a breaking news piece to share. Not that it's like overly crazy, because he's good defensively, that's that. But the Cincinnati Reds just made themselves a move. And the Cincinnati Reds just made a move that makes it more obvious that Eugenio Suarez is not returning to Cincinnati. Brian Hayes, breaking news, just got traded to the Cincinnati Reds from the Pittsburgh Pirates. Now, Brian Hayes doesn't have a bat at all, but now going to a batter's park, I think that's going to benefit him a lot by playing in Cincy, as well as the great defense that comes with Hayes. So there was reporting that actually dropped yesterday from Buster Olney of ESPN, which stated that if the Reds do not acquire Eugenio Suarez, they could be more inclined to go after one of those young Mets infielders in Acuna, Vientos, Beatty, or Mauricio. Well, doesn't appear that's going to happen barring changes now, because Cabrine is exactly who you bring in to shore up defensive issues there that you have in the hot corner, while seeing if his bat can maybe get some life and a change of scenery while staying there in the NL Central. So if you guys have any thoughts on the Cabrine Hayes trade that just happened with the Reds, let me know in the comments down below. But as we continue on, we have plenty more reporting to get into. Well, you thought we were done talking? Far from it, everybody. We got plenty more to get into in this one. And let's get into talking about now what's happening with this Mets team in regards to Brandon Lowe. Because Andy Martino of SNY had some very interesting remarks this past day in regards to Lowe. And while it's never a guarantee that the Mets will trade for a player, I think this context is important here. So let's go ahead and listen up. Apologies for the silence, as I just make sure that everything is set audio-wise, so you guys are going to be hearing what Andy has to say in a second. Let's pull this up. Okay, everything looks good there. Bing, bang, boom. Let's go ahead and minimize this. Let's go ahead and show you him, even though I know maybe some of you guys don't want to see him. That's okay. Another thing about Andy, guys, and this is as someone who obviously is a diehard Mets fan that knows how Andy acts in the media, I have not been the biggest lover of Andy, like most. However, regardless on how you feel, he is easily one of the most connected people in the Mets inner circle. And I don't just say this as someone who feels like that's the case. I say that who knows that's the case, who's spoken plenty to people not only connected with Andy, but well within the industry. And I say this also as someone who obviously has been a reoccurring contributor for the New York Post, has worked with SNY, has worked with WFAN. I do know people. And when I tell you that Andy does know his stuff when he gets relayed information, a lot of the time it's very on par with credible sources. That is in fact factual. So let's see what Andy has to say now.
What's the latest with the Mets involving their trade deadline?
I'd like you to introduce me everywhere I go, please. It makes me feel good about myself. It's a nice build-up. Thank you. Right. I think that the Mets right now, Sal, are in kind of like lots of different things in the air mode. You hear things that seem almost contradictory, like you can't possibly do all of these things, but I think Zach would probably say, and could say better than me, it's probably normal for a couple days before the deadline. There's a lot of possibilities, and we're not sure what's going to land. You know they're looking for a bullpen. That's been the case all along. They have been talking to the White Sox about Luis Robert. They have been talking to the Rays about Brandon Lowe, who I learned today they've been on for like a year. So that's why that's potentially something to watch there. They've been talking to clubs, of course, as we discussed yesterday, about potentially trading Mark Vientos. That's not to say that if a team really wants Brett Beatty and they have what you want, or really wants Acuna, or there's just a lot of different things that could happen right now. And I would say that Stearns seems to be running a trade deadline, or at least exploring things that are a little bit more varied than we expected. It seemed like, yeah, bullpen, maybe a starter, maybe a center fielder. But then you hear about someone like Lowe, and you're like, huh, how's that fit? I guess maybe would you be moving McNeil, or then, you know, so like your wheels are kind of turning on all the different things going on. And by the way, I did hear from a team that they were listening on McNeil.
Oh, that the Mets were listening on McNeil.
And that doesn't mean they're going to move him, but they seem to be open to a lot of things.
What's the latest with the Mets involving their...
So let's get the elephant out of the room. The Mets are always going to be listening on every player. If you guys didn't think that the Mets would be listening on pretty much every player with the exception of Alonso, Nimmo, Lindor, Soto, I got a bridge to sell you. They're always going to be listening. That's what every single team does. You're silly not to, because you never know what kind of trade interest you could have from clubs and to what degree, and, you know, if you would actually consider parting ways with those players. No, I do not believe a guy like Jeff McNeil is going to get traded, but if he is, it's because the Mets would obviously be doing that for the betterment of the club in one way, shape, or form. Brandon Lowe, as Andy stated, the Mets have been connected to going back over a year now that they've been pursuing. And that's notable because who was the Mets president of baseball operations over a year ago? David Stearns. So there's clearly been this trend of not only David liking a lot of the pieces that the Rays have to offer, which is why Stearns has traded with the Rays more than any other team, mind you, since becoming president of the Mets. But then you add in the fact that Lowe's bat would not only be a huge upgrade over Jesse Winker for DH, but you can put at second base, even though Lowe is not a good defensive second baseman. So he's really more of your standard DH guy while getting some reps at second that you can then balance between McNeil, while McNeil maybe gets some playing time at second, maybe all over the place, as well as some reps at center, depending on if Robert is landing here, among others. But there is absolutely a world where the Mets can land an outfielder and bring in Brandon Lowe. But if I was a betting man right now, I would say the Mets are guaranteed to land an outfielder, and Lowe is more wishful thinking. Like, we hope it happens, but my big concern with Brandon Lowe is not the Mets' interest, because we know it's significant. It's clearly there. I just don't know if the Tampa Bay Rays are going to go there, because reporting has come out that, especially since the Rays made their ownership change, for those who are unaware, the Rays are in the process of a sale, and their new owners would love the idea of not selling at this year's deadline and instead trying to be as much of a buyer as possible and lock in for postseason play. The Rays are the type of team that usually soft sells to a degree, even in years that they're contending and buying, so it'll be interesting to see how much that may change from now up until the deadline itself. Also checking Jeff passing here, it was Sammy Stafura and Taylor Rogers. So reliever Taylor Rogers, who we know plenty, and prospect Sammy Stafura are going the other way to the Pirates in that trade for Pittsburgh. So that's what we got between the Reds and the Pirates, everybody. Now let me break down more here in Metsland share, because I got to make sure I do not go any stone unturned myself when it comes to reporting, because like I said, a lot has come out over the past literal day that we haven't even gotten a chance to talk about yet. That's separate from Luis Robert, among others. And one of the other guys that we didn't really get a chance to talk about yet, to at least a certain degree, that I'm excited to do now, everybody, has to do with Mr. Ramon Laureano. As you guys can see here, John Heyman of the New York Post yesterday, Mets have been considering Luis Robert and Cedric Mullins as potential center field upgrades. Ramon Laureano, who's having a huge year and under club control for 2026, seems to be further down the Mets list. So again, not surprising, Laureano is less interesting for the Mets than Mullins. And before you say, Wardy, why is that the case when Laureano's having far superior the offensive year than Mullins? The case is the Mets want an outfielder that can actually play the outfield, right? They don't want to bring in a Laureano as their top choice when Laureano is one of the worst outfielders in baseball defensively this year per OAA when he's playing the corner, mind you. So it's not like you're getting any immediate defensive help, really, by bringing in Laureano. You're banking on that bat to really be what carries him should he be added into the mix. But if Laureano does land here, everybody, let's talk about him, because I told you guys I wouldn't really talk about Laureano until the Mets found themselves connected to him in some form or fashion. But now that has happened. And Ramon, if we exclude the PED scandal that he had a couple of years ago, doing his best Starling Marte impression, for those that don't remember, Marte was caught for PEDs during his time with the Pittsburgh Pirates all those years ago. Well, Laureano, in a one-year deal, making only a couple $1 million for the Orioles after he was with a team like the like the Atlanta Braves that we saw, among others. Laureano looks like he's now back to being more of what he's wanted to be throughout his career. And to give you guys just a gist as to how good Ramon has been this year, this is one of those guys that in previous years in his career, going back to the A's, is known for the plus defense as well as, a bat that has some pop for sure. Like he would have great defensive range while also being able to slug some bombs for you. Now Laureano, at the age of 31, who has club control for 2026, has 15 home runs, the most he's had in a season since the Juice Baseball 2019 season, mind you. 45 runs scored and 46 RBIs. Good for a 291 average, a 356 on base, and a whopping 531 slug. The guy's batting 45% above league average. That right there is why the Mets want him. It doesn't have to do with the fact that he's really a net negative defender, even though that we know Laureano can be proficient. As you guys are actually seeing in some of my highlights beside me right now, Laureano's going out and making some catches. So I think when we evaluate Laureano's defense, it probably has more to do with the fact of him kind of being utilized all over the place, right? Laureano is a guy personally I thought to be best in center, but now as he's gotten older, he's been utilized in right field and left field more than anything else. Can be a DH fit for you as well. He's pretty much just an upgrade over what the Mets' current options are to a degree when looking at a bat-first outfielder that can be utilized either off the bench or in key situations. Like Laureano would be adding significant depth for this team is what it would be. And even with him batting from the left side, I think you can make the argument that he himself could be a Jesse Winker replacement as well. Laureano can handle both righty and lefty pitching. And he's, funny enough, has actually been a guy this year that has done really well against right-handed pitching, if I'm not mistaken. So Laureano has been not having an anomaly of a season, but he's finally back to being a player that teams actually want again. And he started to showcase that last year because he batted 259 with a 311 on base and a 437 slug, 8% above league average as a batter. So it's not like he's foreign from being a productive player, but he is now a hotter commodity than he has been in previous years, no denying that. And while I don't believe the Mets are a lock to land someone like Ramon, the reason why we're breaking him down again is because if the Mets do land him, don't be surprised because you'll be like, oh yeah, I watched that video from WardyNYM where he broke down like a million players that the Mets have been tagged to, and Ramon Laureano was one of the players that they're seeking interest in, but also know that he is not necessarily on the top of their list by any stretch. He's just one of many, many names the Mets have found themselves connected to. So Laureano, let me know if you guys are for or against a potential trade for him. Before we get out of here, let me just make sure that there are nothing else that I really feel inclined to share with each and every one of you. Yeah, as a surprise, absolutely nobody, as Will Salmon broke down in his latest article yesterday, the Mets are fully shopping Paul Blackburn. Makes sense. Blackburn has been stretched down the minor leagues. There's really no room for him right now. And the Mets do not like Blackburn as their multi-inning reliever guy. If they did, they would not be shopping him as much as they are. So while Blackburn might not get traded at all and could impact the Mets still in the second half, the Mets are far more interested in trading away Blackburn, knowing that they have an abundance of lower quality starting, but, more so for the sake of eating innings to see if he would be better suited elsewhere and kind of take things from there. We also know that in what's happened with Emmanuel Clase and the Guardians, it has really impacted the markets of a lot of teams, including the Mets, but potentially for the better. Michael Marino, a very good job doing the MLB-wide reporting there. When Michael has the stuff he knows, and he did say how this kind of benefits the Mets. Guys that they might have finished second or third for are now top on their list because we're seeing a lot of opposing teams going to elsewhere for certain players. The point is, everybody, is that there is a wider net of quality players available at this year's deadline than what was initially anticipated, and that's immediately impacting teams like the Mets for the better because it's meaning that they will have more of their top options will actually stay their top options, or guys that they thought were not really feasible option maybe are a bit more feasible now because of the assets that they have as well as what other contending teams are doing and seeking players in different areas. So folks, we have a lot to break down in Mets land, and once we have more to share beyond what I just relayed to each and every one of you later on today, as we'll be live again for our post-game coverage / probably our latest Mets trade news and rumors segment, a live edition we'll be doing later on this evening. So make sure that you guys are not missing a beat on that front whatsoever. But with that being said, though, everybody, that is going to do it for our latest New York Metropolitan breakdown. So I hope you guys found yourself enjoying the content. Roughly 40 minutes, and I feel like I still got more to say. So if you want to know my thoughts on Robert as well as others, please make sure to check it out there after you guys are watching this one and previous content. Check out our Wardy Day tickets that are still available for you guys. That's pinned in the comment down below in the comment section as well as the description. I will play that video for you guys to check out on the platform again tomorrow and all day on the day of the deadline. I will be live here tomorrow as well, guys, probably starting no later than I'd say 11 a.m. or so, barring changes for our deadline coverage. We'll be live up until 3 p.m. as I will then be live in the Bleacher Report app there for a couple hours with a fantastic co-host as my partner in crime with me. And we are going to be live not only in the Bleacher Report app for their main Major League Baseball trade deadline coverage, but we'll be live on their YouTube channel as well to their 4 or 5 million subscribers. So it's going to be a big event tomorrow. Make sure you're on the lookout for it if you want to see me in the BR app. And rest assured, if any moves happen for the Mets while I'm live in BR, I'm still going to do everything in my power to pump out content on the YouTube channel right away. So I might take a clip from BR and put it up right away on YouTube. I might simultaneously go live on YouTube for a short segment and react, or we might just wait a little bit, maybe a half hour or so, and then you'll actually get my reaction analysis as we'll be back live on YouTube starting latest 5 p.m. Eastern there for our second multiple live shows tomorrow on the day of the deadline. You're not going to miss a beat. Thanks to your guy, Wardy, so you're welcome in advance. But all jokes aside, thank you guys again for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out, baby. Let's go, Mets.